Survivors, seekers, and thrivers, welcome to Transcending Trauma, a spiritual odyssey. I'm Shari Lee Roberts, living proof that transformation is real. Get ready for powerful insights, inspiring stories, and a little laughter along the way.
Welcome back to day. I have hope. Fitzgerald, and you are in for an incredible adventure today. His hope is not only a best selling author, but a spiritual guide and an energy healer, and a whole lot more. I'll be honest, hope, even though I am quiet, developed spiritually. I know I am going to learn a lot from you. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you and your time.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm very happy to be here. I couldn't be more pleased to sit down and have a chat with you.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the multiple things that hope is known for and helps others with is called the infinity wave, and that is part of the title of her book. Hope, how about we begin with you telling us about the infinity wave?
Well, I would love to. Thank you. The infinity wave is a name that was given to a symbol that was the third in a sequence of 3 visions that I received at the end of 2010 as I was walking across my living room. I was not in the habit of receiving visions. I didn't know what was going on. I saw a giant wave of water, like a beautiful, 10 stories, beautiful high wave. And it was moving towards me slowly. And there was a kind of, when you watch the news, if you watch the news, I don't, but there's a kind of a ticker tape thing going across the bottom.
Yeah.
So there was a kind of byline, I call it a byline there, that was going, as I saw this wave, I also was aware of this message going by. And the message, basically, I'll paraphrase, is this wave represents a push of evolution that is coming to the planet. It will be anchoring in at the end of 2011. If you choose to swim with it, surf with it, things are going to go much better for you than if you resist. And then the wave turned on its side. Now, we're talking about evolution. Like I didn't go around talking about evolution. These were you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, I mean, I have a very, lifelong spiritual practice, growth, whatever that interest, and but this was a real leap into something else. So then the wave turned on its side, and what you would think that a surfer would come through that barrel, that curling,
Mhm.
kind of looks like a
Yeah.
letter C. Um,
Yeah.
that had a byline, and it said, as the water moves away from the shore and deepens into the seabed, into the earth, to get its energy to create the crest, that's the physics of a wave, so
Mhm.
should you, meaning me, but meaning really everybody, I came to find out, leave all your book learning, all your so called knowledge on the shore and go to the earth and go to the wisdom keepers of the earth for your knowledge. And then mix that with this incoming push of this massive wave, whatever it was. And then the curling letter C of the water didn't just fall back into the ocean, but it turned into a standing wave of flowing water. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And
No. Yeah.
figure eight of flowing water.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
was about 18 inches high and about 18 inches off my forehead. And that did not have an explanation. And it didn't go away. And it hung around for a couple of days until I sat down with my dowsing rods. By that point, I'd been dowsing for nearly 20 years. So I was pretty good at, asking questions and getting to the bottom of things. And after a series of sessions with my rods, the upshot was that this figure eight of flowing water is a symbol that represents something much, much bigger, just like any symbol, cross, ankh, whatever.
Mhm.
And the thing that was much, much bigger was 10th dimensional love and compassion. And we were being sent this by a loving universe for the times that were ahead to remind us to stay in a flow state. What I came to realize is that if we're in a state of love and compassion, we are automatically in a flow state and vice versa,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then my lovely guides told me, I said, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And can it please go away?
I don't want it.
I'm not
La la la
interested.
la 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 la.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm like, no, you actually need to teach the world about this. I was living in very far western Massachusetts next to a sheep farm. I had a computer, but I didn't have a website. I mean, it wasn't an entity online except for email.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how am I supposed to do that? I have no idea. Well, they said start where you are. Yeah, and I dowsed out. They wanted me to set up 3 weekends over the course of 3 months, one per month, and that would be a complete workshop. And I said, but I don't know what I'm teaching. And they said,
Yeah.
well, we'll spool it out for you as you go. And I was like, no, I
Yeah.
do not want to do that. I'm a
Yeah.
very I have taught before. I have been on stage a lot. Like I'm a leader, I'm a director. I can do all those things. But when it came to spirituality, no, I'm in the back of the room. I'm a perpetual student, and just let me fly under the radar. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Mhm.
So the proverbial foot was in my back, and I
Yeah.
just jettisoned because in the end, you really can't say no. And so
No.
I had to take a major leap of faith, of trust that I would have what I needed when I needed it. And that began a journey that was pretty crazy, but very rewarding. So
Yeah.
I'll pause there.
Oh, well, I can relate 100% to your story. That is I'm on my list for word of what I was told about writing my memoir.
Wow.
I said, no, no, I will not do. I don't know how I'm not going to it to world that I have up my life. I'm just not well like you when the period lays down and I have no way but to go with that do with step us but yeah first they teaching class looked like so you told what to so tell us what you and how it turned out.
Well, I didn't know what else to do. Now you have to remember, or not. You don't have to remember. You don't know. I will tell you that for years I had been following all kinds of teachers, such as Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton and people like that. Also shamans. So it was I was curious about that. And so I was very keen to understand science and spirituality coming together. That was kind of my deep yearning to know about. And
Yeah.
so I had a bunch of people that I followed that were going in that direction. So when it came time to figure out what I would be teaching, because I didn't know what the infinity wave was at all, I sat
Yeah.
down with my dowsing rods, and my dear friend had been with me. Thank goodness I had a witness in the living room when these visions came in, and she also was there.
Oh,
Yes, I had a witness, so it wasn't just me. She
okay.
didn't see the wave, but I was speaking it as I was seeing it. And
Yeah.
so then she would sit with me once a week, and I would get my dowsing rods out. I'd like, what am I supposed to teach here? I don't even know what this is. And all of a sudden, these very deep, slow voices would come out of me, and complete practices would just bloop, blurp out. And
Wow.
I had up till that time and afterwards, I had a regular Monday morning crystal bowl meditation. And I didn't speak
Mhm.
during it. I just played one of my seven bowls, and I would douse for which bowl wanted to sing that day, and then we'd sit and we'd have a half an hour. So I was used to playing the bowls, and these practices came out. Now, I also really didn't trust channeling at the time. I felt
Mhm.
like, it all has to go through a filter of the human being, and so it's going to get a bit adulterated. I don't know. I felt like there were nuggets in there, but whatever. Well, then
Yeah.
these voices came out, and these practices and these words that I would never use in a
Mhm.
sequence that I would never put them in,
Yeah.
and even I would see the word drop down, like a little word would just drop down,
Wow.
And sometimes I go, well, I don't like that word, and I try to push it aside, and it would ping right back, like a ping. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
then I had to admit, okay, something's happening here. I'm not in charge of this.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I would get one per week. So by the weekend, the last weekend of the month, I would have three practices. And then I went back to, because that first vision talked about evolution, I kept thinking, I was at Findhorn, the beautiful community in Scotland in 1976, where if anybody is curious about if real magic can happen, they have to read the Findhorn Garden, and it's all true. And I was there, and I yes, I just say yes.
Wow.
But they taught the Teilhard de Chardin, the 19th century Renaissance man who was a philosopher and an archaeologist and a priest and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And they taught his theory of evolution. And I never forgot it. And so all those years later, I went back to that. And then I started to splice in current science and looked at how it seemed that up until that point, I would think about evolution happening somewhere in the background, very, very slowly. Never thought about it. And then I
Yeah.
realized I think this is happening consciously. Like we get to actually be involved with our evolution. We get to actually, and we know today conscious evolution is ubiquitous. But in 2010, it was not. I looked for it everywhere. I looked online. The only person who talked about conscious evolution was Barbara Marx Hubbard. She had one little mention somewhere. And so I thought, if this thing is this push of evolution, and we get to be conscious of our evolution, and to even say that today, I know it seems crazy because everybody is now, but we
Yeah.
weren't not that long ago,
No.
15 years ago, we were not. And
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
I thought, okay, maybe this wave thing and these three practices that I received from the beginning are helping us to get untethered to this reality, this 3D reality, and move into something else. And so some of the first practices were to disconnect us from gravity. And then there was the disconnect from time. And this is how we started to loosen ourselves up to be able to even contemplate,
Yeah.
another
Mhm.
state, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the long story, short, is that each month, and each week I would sit down and get another practice. So by the end of the 3 months, the,
Mom.
the, the
Oh.
first weekend, the first workshop was 3 weekends. By the end of March, I looked back and I saw, oh my goodness, all of these practices that are like stepping stones across the river and
Mhm.
to evolve to our next level. But the
Yeah.
proof was in the pudding. The participants in the workshop had all evolved. And the idea that evolution was a slow process was no longer, no, we
Yeah.
kept rubbing our eyes, and people's faces filled out, and people looked different, and they were able to sustain a more joyful state, and things that were wrong in their lives turned around. And but then I repeated it two more times until I could actually scientifically, in a way, look back and
Mhm.
say, okay, this is something.
Yeah.
I can trust that this is something. I don't know what
Mhm.
exactly, but
Yeah. Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
happening. So that was
Yeah.
the beginning.
Det är وهاي okay. Can you explain what dowsing
Yeah.
is and how you came to know of it and use it.
Sure, sure. Uh, well, I was very fortunate to be born to an open minded mother in the
Oh,
50s. And
oh,
mothers in the 50s were not typically reading, you know, woo woo books because they hid them.
no.
They hid them.
Yeah.
And,
Uh,
but I think I chose very well because she opened a lot of windows for me quietly. Um,
yeah.
But at one point, she began to study much more openly in the 70s. Things started to
Mm,
crack open just a little bit. And
yeah.
at one point, she showed me how you could hold a thread and a needle, and it would go around and around if you asked it a yes or no question. And
Mm,
that was my first exposure to what I would come to understand was a pendulum. So,
yeah.
uh, but it wasn't until many years later, I was a mother of two little kids, a toddler and a child, infant, and I had a knack for arranging furniture and interiors, and also gardening and things like. I had a knack for it, and
Hmm.
I was interested in learning about feng shui. And one of my clients who I had helped to do her house said, "Oh, I found a feng shui class. Let's take it together." And I said, "Sure." So it was on, once a week in the evenings, and we would go to different people's in the classes houses. We trade off. And the night they came to my house, the teacher came in with all these wire hangers and wire cutters. And as she was talking to us, she started cutting these wire hangers up into L shapes. And she said, what I'm going to teach you is how to dowse when you reach a point with feng shui where you're confused, you don't know what the right answer is, you can simply dowse. Or you can do a lot of math. So I said, well, I'd rather dowse. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody in the class went to my backyard, and because I knew where the water main was, I was not allowed to participate. But they had to stand against my garage and take baby steps and ask to be shown where the water was, the water main. And sure enough, they all lined up and they went beep, 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 beep. And as they crossed the water main, their little metal rods came together. And that would indicate that they had found water. Okay, so I'm
Wow.
watching this and going, "Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued now."
Yeah.
Well, it took me a while to relate that the pendulum and those wire rods were all part of a similar thing called dowsing. And we've all heard, I think
Yeah.
most of us have heard of sort of the old timey guy in the overalls with the wooden sticks or the metal rods walking a field to try to determine where a well could be dug. And that would be the old fashioned way, but it is still used today. And even though they have all the fancy equipment, a water dowser is much less expensive and extremely accurate. And so I didn't really think about that at that time. But the next day, I went literally into my closet with my little wire coat hangers, and and
Yeah.
and I asked a silly question like, "Is my hair purple?" That kind of thing. Is
Yeah.
my name Katie? And sure enough, they were like, "No." And then I said, "Well, is my name Hope?" Whatever. And they did, yes. So they're working, and I was like, "Holy cow!" Okay, you know,
Yeah.
who's talking? This is
Yeah.
cool. And
Yeah.
I was living in Dallas at the time,
Hmm.
and I had, as I said, two little kids. It was not the environment for me to go this was really at the very beginning of the internet. I just used it for coursework and calculations. I had a little tiny Mac thing stack.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and I wasn't about to go to the library in Dallas and look up dowsing. No, I don't think that's
Yeah.
going to happen. So I started to
Yeah.
teach myself. And so I've just finished a course on this, by the way, and I'm very excited. It's going to be released soon. So that
Oh,
because so many people ask me how to dowse, and I want everybody to have this tool. It's a
yes.
beautiful, beautiful way of divination, and
Hmm.
it's a relationship that you build over time because it takes a while for the literal mind to say, oh, maybe I can trust the information, even though my brain says I want to do the other
Yeah.
thing. But the
Yeah.
dowsing is telling me to do this thing. What if I trusted? And see what happens, So that takes
Yeah.
time to develop. And over the years, I developed we as the questions got riskier and riskier and more challenging, and we decided to trust them. It took us on moves. It took us. We used the rods for a lot of things. People thought we were crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. You were way ahead of your time and kudos to you for following the divine guidance that is remarkable, and so many people have and are benefiting from you. Thank you. Okay, now will you take us to when you began connecting people to certain areas or land, um, did I get that right? Um,
Are you speaking of
yeah,
the sacred travel?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, you know, uh, hand in hand with dowsing and hand in hand with deeper a deeper shamanic association with the natural world
Mhm.
is the pursuit of land anomalies. And I mean, it's just a natural outcropping. Um, I dowsed for my first trip to take people on in that very first year of the workshops. I was told to take a small group to Cornwall, England. Now, I didn't know anything about Cornwall. I knew about Cornish game hen, and that was it. And I,
Yeah.
you know, and I had no idea why. I actually got out the map of England, and my friend put her finger all over, ran it all over, and I dowsed for where exactly we were supposed to go. And she put her finger on St. Ives, Cornwall, and the rods were like, yes. And we dowsed the date
Wow.
to go, and the second place to visit, well, of course, we wanted to go to Glastonbury, was Avebury. We had to be in Avebury as well, which is further east. But Cornwall is that tippy tip toe of the boot of England, furthest west that you can go. And
Okay.
it's once we got there, we found out why we were there. because I think there are more sacred stones, etc., and sites per square mile than anywhere in the world. It's concentrated. So
Wow.
we have to remember that the land has an effect on us. Now, even if we're not conscious of it, land has an effect on us. So we had just
Yes.
come off of 9 months of working with the infinity wave, um, and starting to work with land in a way because we were told to wave with the natural world, wave with a tree, wave with the ocean, wave with a rock, right? We were told that we
Mhm.
could connect our consciousnesses with these supposedly inanimate objects, which we know they're not. So
Yeah.
we were already being drawn into that kind of connection, and we went to Cornwall. And I dowsed where we were supposed to go, which of the sites to see, and in what order. But we also left some space for where we would be called in the moment, in case there was a
Mhm.
spontaneous urge to do something.
Yeah.
All I can tell you is that that trip, to this day, my husband and I look at each other and say that was the most magical trip we took, because we
Oh,
were traveling in a we started to call it the wave bubble. We would go to a site and people would be leaving, and then we would have it to ourselves for as long as we wanted, and when we would leave, the people would be coming. This happened over and
wow.
over and over, so that it got to
Wow.
be okay. We have helpers here. They are holding the gates
Yes.
back so that we can have our
Yeah.
full integration with this site. And whatever it's feeding us, now when we are waving it, we are now delivering this beautiful love and compassion to that area. So it was a mutual beneficial situation. Anyway, that trip was amazing, and I then dowsed when we got back. Should I take more people to more places? And the answer was yes. And so every year, except for the 2 years of COVID, I have taken people somewhere. Now, this is a perfect example of my little brain wanting one location and the rods telling me, nope, you're not supposed to go there. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I want to go back to England. I want to go, lots of places, and the rods will say, no, you're supposed to go south. Okay, well, which continent? Well, South America. Okay, so which country? And I boil it down. So I've been to
Mhm.
Peru 3 times, and
Wow.
and for good reason. It's an incredible place.
Yes.
Oh my God. And I've been to, southwestern France, South Africa, all of the Isles, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England, and the southwest of this country, Easter Island,
Mm.
just Mount Shasta, all that kind of thing. So I I don't know what's next. I haven't dowsed for next year yet, but I have a feeling maybe Hawaii. So, what do we do when we go there? Usually, I go to the
Yes.
ancient sites. So, when we say a sacred site, what does that really mean? There's a land
Mhm.
element of it. There are fissures deep in the earth that allow what's called telluric energy to come from way down and up. And this is where you might find a vortex. And I have my rods here. So what that would look like, a vortex, is that this would spin around and around and around and around. Okay. And it might go
Oh,
clockwise and it might go counterclockwise.
yeah.
But you can also follow a site that's potent like that, and it doesn't have to be a vortex, but if there are four or more of those in a line, in a straight line, now we can call it a ley line. And now we know that that fissure is working its way through the earth in a particular direction. So
Oh,
you'll have a well, or you'll have a standing stone, or you'll have a cathedral, or you'll have something along the way on that line, and it can stretch. In fact, the one of the most famous, or two of the most famous ley lines, are called the Michael and Mary lines. And where do they begin? Cornwall, England. So we were
Oh,
plopped right on the beginning,
yeah.
right? And
Wow.
it goes all the way northeast on an angle. It's also in Avebury. It's also in Glastonbury, and there are places where it crosses, and those places are
Okay.
especially potent. So a sacred site has to do with the land quality, but it also has to do with how people have used it over time.
Mhm.
If they've come prayerfully, if they've come to be in an altered state in some way, um, usually there is, just like with the wave, usually there's a give and take. So it's not just going there and,
Mhm.
give me what I need. It's usually a back
Yeah.
and forth.
Okay.
And over time, that builds up. And when you go into an ancient cathedral, you can feel it,
Yes.
right? And partly that's
Yes.
because of the fact that they put that cathedral on a sacred pond, or I mean, a spring, or so they knew where the pagans would go, and they would plop the cathedral right down on top, and then they'd use a special geometry to focus the energy into the altar area, so that by the time you would get into the church, into that altar area, you would have an opportunity to reach an altered state. And it's interesting that it's called an altar, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So you can
Oh,
feel both the quality of the land, the quality of the geometry, the building, the way it's constructed, and the quality of the many, 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 many people, the souls who have come in, hopefully in a heart filled state, and left that behind. What we're supposed to do is, in any sacred site, we're not supposed to leave any detritus behind. We're supposed to um, be as clean as possible energetically when we
mhm.
enter, so that we don't
Okay.
leave anything but our positive essence, so to speak.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those sites can be dowsed. You can ask your dowsing rod to point you in the direction of a ley line, or a sacred site, and it'll indicate where you could find it. Now it could be miles away, but then you ask, how far is it? and you
Yeah.
know and when you if it's within 10 miles, you might find it, and then then the rods will cross when you're on it. And it could be a grove of trees, it could be anything.
Det är så. Det är nej. Do we do? No. Um, what? Okay. Do you know why beyond Cornwall? Do you know the reason for the next location that you are guided to?
Mm.
What determines that and does that have anything to do the people who are going there?
Great questions, Sherry. Okay. um I often do not know why we are going where we're going. uh
Okay.
I sometimes do. Sometimes I receive transmissions from, well, like if when we went to Mount Shasta for the 888 Lionsgate in 2024, I was told in no
Wow.
uncertain terms that I had to bring a group there, and we had to be in a certain spot on the mountain at a certain time, and so on. And we had a big task to do. And in that case, um, Saint Germain came in 2 or 3 times to give us information about that ahead of time. Um, I one of my guides, and I know a lot of people will relate to this, but I'm gonna but Merlin turns out to be one of my guides. And Merlin is extremely, I just invite everybody to erase any images you have of Merlin and any fanciful ideas you have of Merlin, because he describes himself
Mhm.
to me as a man of the woods. Very simple.
Mhm.
He's
Yeah.
he's kind of like a grandfather figure to me at this point. He goes
Mhm.
with me wherever I go and opens up the way and connects
Oh,
with the beings of that land. And
okay.
so sometimes I get I know what the mission is, and sometimes, most often, it unfolds as we're in it.
Um,
For
yeah.
instance, I'll give you a
Oh,
for instance. I took a small group to Scotland 2 years ago, and we had absolutely stellar weather for 10 days. We had in the 70s, sunny. Like the Scots were all saying, and it was in September, and they were all saying, "What's going on? This is so weird." And
yeah.
it started
Yeah.
to rain on our last afternoon. So again, that's what happens. We get this
Yeah.
beautiful weather. We get everything opens. It's fantastic, and because it's doused, because I'm working with something, not trying to take
Yes.
control in my little
Uh,
mind, right? So
yeah.
what I didn't know was that the culmination of that trip was to go to the field outside of Inverness called Culloden, which is the final battleground between the Scots and the English that determined who would rule Scotland. And it's been that way ever since, that
Mhm.
England is dominant. And it was a heartbreaking, horrible battle. It just, the whole thing came into me like, and all of a sudden we had to change our plans, and we veered off, and we went to Culloden, and we did all this healing work. And people may or may not know that when there is great trauma in any battleground, certainly here in
Mhm.
the US, there are souls that don't leave. And they even
Yeah.
centuries later, they're wandering around, uh, and they
Yeah.
just can't get over it. And they
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
being in the world, whatever, long list of things. So
Yeah.
what we can do, if we are called to do it, is to help them move along, and in
Yeah.
understanding that it is in their highest good. So,
Yeah.
but that takes some energetic lifting. And so
Yes.
we doused for where we should go on it's a very big field, a very big area where we should go to do that work. And we did it. And it did have, so in that case, the people who were on the trip, I think, were perfectly called to that. But there's one other trip that really speaks to your question. I was told to take people to Ireland, and I was excited because I
Mhm.
had been to Ireland before and I loved it. And
Yeah.
I, um, I had a group of about 15, and we had a lovely elderly man who was our guide. Now, he was not a woo woo guide. He was a, straight history, that kind of guy.
Mm.
Lovely, lovely man.
Yeah.
And I already knew that two of the women on my trip had just lost their husbands,
Oh.
at least two. On the second or third day, this lovely gentleman confessed to me that he had lost his wife 2 weeks before.
Oh my.
And he didn't want to stay home.
Oh,
then it turned out there was somebody else on the trip who had also, that I didn't know before, who had also just lost somebody. It was so the whole theme became
Yeah.
a mortality trip.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everywhere we
Wow.
went, and we went to a lot of ancient burial sites. So
Mm.
there was all this opportunity to work through our pain, the grief of loss. The whole thing became about that, and we couldn't have been in a better place
Uh,
because of all these cairns and all these burial sites and all this antiquity. And oh my goodness, it was absolutely incredible. And by the end of it, and I would always include that guide and also our bus driver, who was just a straight man of few words. He wore leather shoes, tie-up shoes. He always had on a shirt and a tie and
uh,
black pants, and he was always very professional. And I'd say, "Come and join us in our infinity circle," and
yeah.
we'd do the practice together. And at first they stood back, and then they started to join us. And the very last thing we did, I always try to build to this big climax. We were in the Northwest, and there's a big pile of stones on top of a hill, and it's called Maeve's Tomb. And they don't really know, nobody's excavated it, and it's big. But you have to get up a pretty steep hill. Well,
Yeah.
that driver got out of the car and rather, a bus, and he starts making a beeline for the top of the hill. He beat us all, and he was a smoker, and he was not a young man. And he's going in his leather shoes, like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
We were shocked. Anyway,
Yeah.
we got up to the top, and it's this 360-degree view. It's absolutely incredible. No fog, no nothing, just, sunny and
Wow.
beautiful. And from
Yeah.
that point, from that sacred site, which is already, bursting forth, we stood in a circle and we did our last practice, and both the men were in the practice. And were moved, they were so moved. So
Yeah.
that's the
Wow.
beauty of the infinity wave, is I don't have to do a whole lot. I let the wave step in
Hmm.
and take over. Really, I'm walking hand
Yeah.
in hand with it all the time, and good things happen.
Oh my. There are so many more things I would love to know, but unfortunately, time is almost up, and you have a very full schedule. Can you at this point in time taking into consideration all that you have done, have been guided to do, all the people who have come into your universe to what are your thoughts, beliefs, at this time, and what do you see or think will come next? It is a part of your incredible spiritual evolution. It does not appear that you are slowing down. I just see this vertical growth for you and the people around.
Well, I pause because I would say, for the previous, I don't know, from 2015 to, or from 2010 to maybe a few years ago, I would peek around the corner a little bit. I think it's when the whole shutdown thing happened.
Yeah.
I had a vision then as well in the very early days. And that's pretty much the last time that I've looked around the corner because everything is happening so quickly now and everything is so dynamic that it almost doesn't matter what around the corner looks like. What really matters is the here and now. And that's always been true. So I'm not saying anything brilliant here. But for us to consider the power of presence, the power of being in the now, my guides, and I do weekly meditations, channel meditations, transmissions, whatever for people, for my group, for whoever chimes in. The most common theme is that we, having chosen to be here at this time, having begged to be here at this time, to figure out what our role is. And we don't have to know the particulars all the time, but the common theme is that we came to be the beacons. We came to maintain light.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like for you, whatever that feels like for you, we are here to maintain light and, broadcast. Because when we go online like that, it matters to the whole, in the quantum of things, it matters, right? So we are bombarded, not just on a daily basis, but on a minute-to-minute basis. Everybody knows this, with opinions and judgments and all these things to hook us to go left or right, forward or back, whatever. That is just a temptation. And when we come back to the present moment, what can I control? I can control my beacon. I can stand steadfast in my beaconhood, for lack of a better word. I don't think that's a real word. But, that's my moment-to-moment choice. And that is what makes a difference. Because when I radiate that, the people around me will also receive that. And it's a chain reaction. So I just come back to that. I come back to being the beacon. And a lot of the other messages from the transmissions have to do with taking care of ourselves in that process. Really, they nurture us. They make sure you're doing all the things and don't be hard on yourself. Just love yourself and love the fact that you signed up for this. And we're with you. Oh, we are so not alone. I mean, they tell us, I have I don't say I have, but there's a wide variety of beings that comes through, from galactic beings to Mother Mary to Yeshua to, it's a wide variety. And they're all saying the same thing. You're not alone. We're all here. We're right by your side. Call on us, And so when I heard the telepathy tapes and I heard about the non-speaking autistics who are actually communicating in the quantum field, tapping into the quantum field, they're showing us the way. If there's anything that looks like a future to me, it's that. And they are living in a oneness. They are living in a unified field, and that's where we're heading. They are the bridge for us. So once again, we come back to our beacons, we come back to presence, we come back to being in love and compassion with the infinity wave. It gets you there fast. That's the point. We don't have time to go to a cave. We need something that works quickly.
Hope what a pleasure this has been, and a growth opportunity, not just for me, but everyone who will hear this. Thank you, and keep on being you. Truly, really marvelous. Love your energy and all that you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. I've heard other interviews with you, or you giving other interviews, and I always find your questions so insightful and sensitive, and I really appreciate them. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. I am deeply touched. Thank you. Take care.
You too. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Transcending Trauma, the Spiritual Odyssey. If you're working to overcome trauma and would like to work with me or be a guest on my show, contact me through my website at shariroberts.org. Please hit the follow button to make sure you don't miss any episodes. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn at Shari Roberts. You can find all the links in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Shari Roberts, your host, reminding you that you're never alone. Until next time, sending you love and light.